"I haven't had sex in 6 months," the Giant Apache Sister told the virgin rancher. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide, open fields of the ranch. The air was crisp and smelled of fresh grass and earth. Birds flew across the sky, their songs filling the quiet of the early day. In the middle of this vast land stood a small wooden house, home to a young rancher named Luke. He was known for his kindness and hardworking nature. People in the nearby town often called him the Virgin Rancher because he lived a simple life, far from distractions and complications, focused on caring for his animals and the land. Luke's mornings always began the same way. He would step outside, take a deep breath of the fresh air, and look over his herd of cattle. Every movement of the animals was familiar to him. He knew which cow liked to graze near the creek, and which calf always followed its mother too closely. Luke felt a sense of peace in these small routines. They were predictable, safe, and comforting, yet deep down he often wondered if there was more to life than just the ranch. One day, a visitor arrived. She was a tall, strong woman, with hair dark as night and eyes that seemed to carry stories of the past. She introduced herself as Amara, a member of a nearby Apache community. People called her the Giant Apache Sister because of her height and the confident way she carried herself. She had come to Luke's ranch seeking help with some animals that had wandered from her land. At first, Luke was nervous. He had not interacted with many people outside his small circle, and Amara's presence felt different, powerful in a way he had never experienced before. But as they worked together, helping the animals find their way back home, Luke began to notice something unusual. Amara seemed both strong and gentle at the same time. She had a way of speaking that made him listen carefully, even to simple stories about her life and her people. Amara noticed Luke's quiet nature too. She could see that he was honest, reliable, and had a heart full of care for the creatures around him. "It's rare," she said one afternoon as they guided a stray horse back into the corral, "to meet someone who takes the world as gently as you do." Luke smiled, a little embarrassed. Compliments were not common for him. He was used to action, not words. Days passed, and Amara stayed at the ranch longer than she had planned. Each morning, they would work side by side, fixing fences, tending to the animals, and learning small things about each other. Luke found himself curious about her life, about the places she had seen, the traditions she followed, and the stories she carried. He learned that she had faced hardships too, responsibilities that demanded courage and resilience. Yet she moved through life with a calm strength that left him in awe. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Amara sat on a wooden bench outside the house. Luke joined her, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. They watched the cattle settle down for the night, the gentle sounds of the ranch creating a comforting rhythm. After a long silence, Amara spoke softly. "I haven't had a chance to share much of my life lately. It feels lonely sometimes, despite being surrounded by people and community." Luke listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He knew she wanted to be heard. There was honesty in her words, a vulnerability that surprised him. He realized that she, too, longed for connection, for understanding, and for someone who could see beyond her strong exterior. It was a moment of quiet understanding, where both felt a subtle bond forming between them. From that night, their interactions began to change subtly. They shared small stories from their childhoods, laughed at clumsy mistakes, and supported each other in daily chores. Luke realized that Amara's presence brought a warmth he had not felt in a long time. He began to notice little things, how her smile could light up even the dullest morning, how her laughter made the air feel lighter, and how her confidence could inspire him to be braver. Amara, on the other hand, began to trust Luke's calm nature. She found comfort in his steady presence, in the way he approached challenges with patience and care. Even though she was used to leading and being strong, she realized that it was okay to lean on someone else, to feel safe without having to guard herself constantly. Life on the ranch settled into a quiet rhythm again, but now there was an invisible connection, a shared understanding that neither had expected. Both Luke and Amara knew that something significant had begun, even if they did not fully understand it yet. There was curiosity, respect, and a subtle excitement in the air, like the calm before a gentle storm. The nights grew longer and the stars shone brighter over the open fields. Luke would often look at them, thinking about the unexpected ways life could change. Amara's stories, her presence, and her quiet strength became a part of his daily thoughts. He realized that the ranch, once a place of pure routine, now held the promise of something new, a connection, a friendship, and perhaps the start of a bond that neither of them had planned but both would soon cherish. In the end, part one of their story was about meeting someone who challenges the ordinary, someone who brings warmth to a life once limited to work and routine. It was about the beginning of understanding, trust, and the subtle beginnings of an emotional journey that would shape both their lives in unexpected ways. The days on the ranch moved with their usual rhythm, but for Luke and Amara, life felt different now. There was a quiet energy in the air, something neither could fully explain. Every morning, Luke would wake before sunrise, but now he looked forward not just to the work, but to the moments when Amara's voice would greet him with a soft, cheerful good morning. It was small, yet it made a difference he could feel in his chest, a warmth that lingered. Even after the sun rose high over the fields, Amara had begun to share more of her life with Luke. She told stories of her childhood in the Apache community, of dances under the moon, of learning the ways of the land from her elders, and of growing up in a world that valued strength, wisdom, and respect for tradition. Luke listened intently, often surprised by the depth of her experiences. He admired her resilience, the way she had faced challenges with courage, yet still held on to kindness and compassion. One afternoon, they worked together repairing a broken fence near the edge of the property. The wind blew across the open fields, carrying dust and the distant sounds of animals grazing. Amara handed Luke a hammer, smiling. "You work fast for someone who hasn't done this before," she said, teasing gently. Luke laughed, feeling a rare ease. He had always been confident in his own way, but her presence brought a different kind of joy, a lightness that made him laugh more freely and enjoy small moments he had once taken for granted. As the days passed, they discovered more about each other's habits and quirks. Luke was surprised to learn that Amara loved reading under the shade of a tree, her favorite books full of history and poetry. She, in turn, found it fascinating that Luke could identify every plant, every animal, and every sound on the ranch. There was a mutual respect growing, a sense of admiration that went beyond simple friendship. They started to rely on each other in small ways, sharing tasks, giving advice, and even making plans together for the day. But life was not without challenges. One morning, a sudden storm swept over the ranch. Rain poured down in sheets, wind bending the trees and lightning splitting the sky. The cattle became restless, their low moans filling the barn. Luke and Amara worked side by side, struggling to bring the animals to safety. Amara shouted instructions over the roar of the storm, while Luke guided the frightened animals, his hands steady despite the chaos. In those moments, they realized how much they trusted each other, how much their presence mattered to one another in times of difficulty. The storm eventually passed, leaving behind a wet, muddy ranch, but also a deepened connection that neither could deny. After the storm, as they cleaned the barn and dried the animals, Luke noticed a change in Amara. She was quieter than usual, thoughtful, almost pensive. Finally, she spoke softly. "It's strange I've lived a life full of action, of responsibilities, of constant motion. But here, with you, everything feels simpler. And somehow I'm learning to just be, to breathe, to enjoy small moments." Luke smiled, understanding exactly what she meant. He had always loved the quiet of the ranch, the simple routines, but with Amara, those moments felt richer, more alive. Evenings became their favorite time of the day. They would sit together on the porch, sipping tea or simply watching the sunset. Conversations deepened. They spoke of hopes, of dreams, of fears that they had never shared with anyone else. Amara admitted that despite her strength and independence, she sometimes felt the weight of loneliness. Luke shared his own uncertainties, the way he wondered if his life would ever change beyond the familiar patterns of the ranch. Each conversation brought them closer, weaving an invisible thread of trust and understanding between them. One day, Amara invited Luke to join her for a walk through a nearby forest. The air was cool, the sunlight filtering through the trees in golden beams. Birds chirped overhead and the smell of pine filled their senses. They moved slowly, talking, sometimes walking in silence, just enjoying each other's company. Luke realized that these simple walks, these ordinary moments, were becoming the most memorable parts of his days. He was beginning to see the world through Amara's eyes, a world filled with stories, with wonder, and with a sense of connection that transcended routine. But as their bond grew stronger, Luke also noticed moments of hesitation in Amara. Sometimes her eyes would look distant, as if she were remembering past challenges or guarding herself from feelings she wasn't ready to share. He sensed that there were parts of her life she still kept private, layers she had yet to reveal. And yet, Luke did not push. He respected her space, understanding that trust and closeness could not be forced. It had to grow naturally, just as the land around them grew with care and patience. One evening, as they returned from a long day of tending the fields, Luke found Amara sitting quietly by the creek, tossing pebbles into the water. He sat beside her without speaking. The sun was low, casting a warm orange glow over the surface of the water. Finally, Amara spoke, her voice gentle but steady. "You know, Luke, meeting you has reminded me that life doesn't always have to be hard, even when it's full of responsibility. There can be peace, joy, and even laughter if you allow it." Luke nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for her presence. "I feel the same," he admitted. "You've shown me that life can be more than work and routine. It can be about connection, about understanding, and about moments like this." From that night onward, a new pattern emerged in their relationship. They began to share more of themselves, not through grand gestures, but in small, meaningful ways. Luke would leave fresh water for Amara's horse by the gate before she woke, and Amara would bring him wildflowers from the nearby meadow, placing them gently on his table. These gestures spoke volumes, revealing the care, respect, and quiet affection they were beginning to feel for each other. Challenges continued, of course. There were days when the workload seemed endless, when the weather tested their patience, and when the realities of life reminded them that they were still human, with fears and doubts. But through it all, they leaned on one another. They celebrated small victories together, comforted each other in times of frustration, and slowly, day by day, built a connection that neither could ignore. By the end of part 2, Luke and Amara had reached a point of mutual trust and understanding that went deeper than either had anticipated. Their days were no longer just about caring for the land and animals. They were about sharing life itself. Every smile, every story, every quiet moment of support had created a bond that was slowly, but surely becoming the foundation for something meaningful. They did not yet know what the future held, but one thing was certain. Their lives had changed, and neither would ever look at the ranch, or at each other, the same way again. Life on the ranch had settled into a rhythm, but for Luke and Amara, the days now carried a new intensity. The bond they shared had grown stronger, and with it came feelings neither had fully acknowledged. Luke found himself thinking about Amara even when he was alone in the barn or checking the fences. He noticed the smallest details, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the soft determination in her steps, the laughter that seemed to light up even the dullest mornings. Amara, too, felt changes within herself. She had always been confident, independent, and self-reliant, but spending time with Luke had awakened parts of her she had long neglected. She felt a sense of calm in his presence, a trust she rarely allowed herself to feel with others. At the same time, there was an underlying tension, a quiet curiosity about what their connection might mean. It was new and unfamiliar territory, but she could not deny the comfort and excitement it brought. One morning, a problem arose on the ranch. A section of the fence near the northern pasture had collapsed during a strong windstorm overnight, and a few cattle had wandered off. Luke and Amara rushed to repair it before the animals could get lost. The work was exhausting under the midday sun, and Luke noticed the strain in Amara's shoulders as she lifted heavy boards. Without thinking, he stepped closer and offered to take some of the weight, and she allowed it, their hands brushing briefly. A spark of awareness passed between them, small, silent, but undeniable. After the fence was fixed and the cattle safely returned, they took a long walk across the pasture, the warm sun casting golden light over the fields. They spoke about the past, sharing memories they had never revealed to anyone else. Amara told Luke about moments of loneliness in her community, times when her strength had been tested, and nights when she had wished for someone to understand her fears. Luke shared stories of growing up on the ranch, of learning responsibility at a young age, and of the quiet longing he had always felt for connection beyond work and routine. Their conversations revealed vulnerabilities that had never been expressed. Luke realized that Amara's strength was not just physical. It was emotional resilience built through challenges, mistakes, and lessons learned over the years. Amara realized that Luke's calm exterior hid a depth of care and wisdom, a quiet strength that had always been there, waiting for someone to recognize it. With each shared story, their trust deepened, creating a foundation that could withstand the tests of life yet to come. As the days turned into weeks, the pair began to notice subtle changes in themselves. Luke felt more confident, more willing to take risks and try new things, inspired by Amara's boldness. Amara found moments of patience and gentleness she had not known she possessed, learning to slow down and appreciate small joys alongside Luke. Together, they created routines that went beyond chores, simple rituals of sharing meals, walking together in the evening, and talking late into the night under a sky full of stars. These moments felt sacred, grounding them in a way that neither had experienced before. But life, as it often does, introduced unexpected challenges. One afternoon, while Amara was visiting a nearby town to deliver supplies to her community, a misunderstanding arose among some ranch workers. Rumors spread about her intentions, questioning why she spent so much time with Luke instead of focusing on her own responsibilities. When Luke heard about it, he felt a surge of frustration and worry. He wanted to defend Amara, to make it clear that their relationship was built on respect, trust, and shared values. But he also knew that arguments and explanations could not always solve the deeper issues of misunderstanding. When Amara returned, she sensed the tension immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked softly. Luke hesitated, then explained what he had heard. She listened carefully, her face thoughtful. "Sometimes people fear what they don't understand," she said finally. "They see us together and assume things without knowing the heart of our connection. But that doesn't change what we know, Luke. It doesn't change us." Her words were a balm to his worry. He realized that life would always bring obstacles, misunderstandings, doubts, and challenges, but their bond was stronger than gossip or fear. They resolved to face whatever came together, trusting in the foundation they had built. Days later, another challenge arrived, this time from the land itself. A dry spell had affected the crops and the water supply for the animals. Luke and Amara worked tirelessly to find solutions, digging new channels, moving water, and rationing supplies to ensure every creature had what it needed. The physical strain was immense, and yet there was a sense of unity in their efforts. Every shared burden, every problem solved together, reinforced their connection. During one particularly long day, as they rested under the shade of a tree, Amara spoke about her hopes for the future. "I've spent so much of my life thinking I had to face everything alone," she admitted. "But now, with you, I see that partnership isn't weakness, it's strength, and maybe strength is better when shared." Luke nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate deeply within him. He realized that the ranch, once a place of solitude and routine, had transformed into a space of growth, understanding, and emotional connection. Evenings became a time of reflection. They would sit quietly, sometimes without words, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Luke learned to read Amara's expressions, noticing when she felt joy, sadness, or uncertainty. Amara began to see Luke's intentions in his small actions, the way he remembered details about her stories, the care with which he treated the animals, and the patience he showed in every task. These silent gestures became as meaningful as spoken words, creating a language of trust and care unique to their bond. One night, after a long day of work, they walked along the edge of the pasture under a sky blanketed with stars. The quiet of the night was filled with the sound of crickets, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant lowing of the cattle. Amara paused and looked at Luke. "You know," she said, her voice almost a whisper, "I never thought I'd find someone I could truly rely on. Someone who understands without needing explanations." Luke smiled. "I feel the same way. It's rare and I don't take it for granted." Their words hung in the air, unspoken emotions connecting them more than ever before. It was a moment of recognition, a mutual acknowledgement of the trust, respect, and care that had grown between them. Neither rushed it, neither forced it. They simply allowed the moment to exist, appreciating the depth of their bond. By the end of Part 3, Luke and Amara had faced real challenges: stormy weather, misunderstandings, and the unpredictability of the land itself. Yet, each obstacle had strengthened their connection rather than weakened it. They had grown individually and together, learning patience, trust, and the quiet power of shared responsibility. Their relationship had evolved from companionship into something far more profound, a partnership rooted in understanding, mutual respect, and the steady warmth of genuine care. As night fell over the ranch, the stars shining bright, both of them felt a sense of anticipation for what lay ahead. Life was unpredictable and challenges were inevitable, but they had learned to face them together. And in that shared understanding, they discovered not only the strength of their bond, but also the possibility of a future filled with hope, support, and a connection neither had expected but both cherished deeply. The ranch was calm that morning, the sunlight spilling across the fields like gold. Luke and Amara moved through their usual routines, feeding the animals, checking fences, and tending to the land. But something felt different. The days of quiet understanding, shared work, and subtle affection had transformed into a deep, unspoken bond. Both of them could feel it in the air, in the way they moved together, spoke to one another, and even in their silences. The connection they had nurtured over weeks was now stronger than either could have imagined. Despite the calm, challenges remained. The drought had continued longer than expected, and the water supply for the animals was growing scarce. Crops in the fields were beginning to wither, and the work was physically exhausting. Luke and Amara faced the difficulties together, their teamwork seamless after months of shared labor. Luke organized the work efficiently, while Amara offered practical solutions, creative ways to conserve water and ensure the animals were fed. It was during moments like these that their trust and respect for each other shone brightest. One afternoon, while repairing a water trough, Amara paused and looked at Luke. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. Luke set down his tools and thought for a moment. "I used to think life would always be like this," he admitted. "Simple, quiet, predictable, but now I see that it can be more. I see that it can have connection, companionship, and even joy I didn't know I was missing." Amara smiled softly, the kind of smile that held both warmth and understanding. "I feel the same," she said. "I never imagined I could feel this, supported, this understood." Their conversations grew deeper in the following days. They talked about hopes, dreams, and what they wanted out of life. Luke admitted that he had always dreamed of a future where the ranch could thrive, where animals and land could coexist in balance, and where he could share his life with someone who truly understood him. Amara shared her vision for her community, her hopes for preserving traditions, and her wish for meaningful connections. In these discussions, they found alignment, shared values, mutual respect, and a desire to face life's challenges together. As the week went on, their bond grew stronger, not just emotionally but in practical ways too. Luke began involving Amara in decisions about the ranch, valuing her perspective in ways he had never considered before. Amara, in turn, encouraged Luke to explore new ideas, try small innovations, and see the possibilities beyond what he had always known. Together, they created a rhythm of collaboration, combining Luke's experience with Amara's insight. The ranch, which had once been purely a place of work, became a space of creativity, partnership, and shared purpose. Yet life is never without tests. One evening, a fire broke out near the edge of the property, likely caused by the dry spell and stray embers from a nearby field. The flames spread quickly, threatening the livestock and the fences. Luke and Amara reacted immediately, running to protect the animals and contain the fire. Smoke filled their lungs, sweat and soot covering their faces, but neither hesitated. They guided the cattle to safety, worked together to create fire breaks, and called for help from nearby neighbors. The danger was frightening, but through it, their connection was undeniable. They relied on each other completely, anticipating each other's movements, communicating without words, and supporting one another through exhaustion and fear. After the fire was finally contained, Luke and Amara stood together, watching the smoke rise into the sky. They were exhausted, covered in dirt and ash, but a quiet relief washed over them. Amara turned to Luke, her eyes filled with both gratitude and something deeper, unspoken. "We make a good team," she said softly. Luke nodded, realizing that their bond had grown stronger through every challenge. "The best team," he replied, his voice steady. And in that moment, they both understood that what they had shared, trust, understanding, and support, was more important than any obstacle life could throw at them. With the immediate danger behind them, they spent the following days repairing the damage, replanting fields, and restoring the ranch. In these quieter moments, the emotional connection they had developed flourished. Luke noticed how natural it felt to have Amara by his side in every task, how her advice and insight enhanced his decisions, and how her laughter and calm presence made even the hardest work lighter. Amara realized that she felt safe and valued in Luke's presence, that he truly saw her for who she was, not just her strength or her achievements. One morning, as they rested under the shade of an old oak tree, Amara spoke about something that had been on her mind for weeks. "Luke, I've spent so much of my life taking care of others, protecting them, and handling responsibilities on my own. But with you, I've realized that it's okay to let someone in to share the weight, to feel understood without having to explain everything." Luke reached for her hand, a gentle gesture of support and recognition. "I've felt the same," he said. "I never imagined I could feel this connected to someone. You've changed the way I see life, the way I see myself." Their shared acknowledgement deepened the trust and care between them. It was no longer just companionship. It was a bond rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and the quiet strength of supporting each other through challenges. They began planning small joys together, simple celebrations like cooking a meal side by side, taking walks at sunset, or sharing stories under the stars. Each moment reinforced the connection that had grown steadily over months, moments that neither wanted to rush but both cherished deeply. As the weeks passed, the ranch began to flourish again. Water was conserved, animals were healthy, and the land showed signs of recovery. Luke and Amara had not only survived challenges, they had grown stronger because of them. Their bond had become a source of strength, giving them courage, patience, and hope. They had learned to communicate without words, support each other without prompting, and appreciate the small joys in everyday life. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of pink and orange, Luke and Amara walked to the top of a hill overlooking the ranch. The view stretched endlessly, fields and animals bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. They stood side by side, taking in the beauty of the land and the quiet sense of accomplishment. Amara turned to Luke and smiled. "We've come a long way," she said softly. Luke nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and gratitude. "Yes, we have, and we did it together." In that moment, there was no need for grand declarations or dramatic words. Their connection spoke for itself. Months of shared work, shared challenges, and shared stories had created something lasting and profound. They understood each other in ways that were rare and precious, and the journey they had taken together was only the beginning. As night fell, they sat together under a blanket of stars, the sounds of the ranch surrounding them. Luke reflected on how much his life had changed since Amara arrived. The ranch, once a place of quiet routine, had become a place of growth, joy, and meaningful connection. Amara realized that she had found more than companionship. She had found understanding, trust, and the comfort of knowing someone would stand by her through every challenge. By the end of Part 4, Luke and Amara had faced the trials of life on the ranch, weathered storms, overcome misunderstandings, and emerged stronger together. Their journey was one of emotional growth, trust, and the quiet beauty of shared experience. The ranch, the animals, and the land had witnessed not only their hard work, but also the unfolding of a bond that promised resilience, companionship, and hope for the future. The story concluded not with a grand finale, but with quiet strength, mutual respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that together, Luke and Amara could face anything life presented. Their lives, once separate and routine, were now intertwined in ways that neither had expected, creating a lasting story of connection, growth, and enduring partnership.